Burks. Let's get started. I'm Doug Burks, MARCC president. Um, our opening prayer for our April delegates meeting will be Mackenzie Doyle, Sisters of Charity, Justice Promoter. Mackenzie.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you, Danny, for letting me lead the prayer today. But I figured before we get started, that we can just take a moment of silence I know there are some folks right now in front of the federal building asking for an end to war. And I know there will be a march tonight as well. So maybe just to remember all those in various countries around the world facing the atrocities of war and violence, and remember those who are no more because of them. So as we remember all those in war zones, I was going to read this quote and then end in a prayer. This quote is from Daniel Berrigan, who was a priest, author, poet, and activist who was arrested countless times with his brother, Philip, and sister-in-law, Liz McAllister. But he wrote this: "One is called to live nonviolently, even if the change one works for seems impossible. It may or may not be possible to turn the U.S. around through nonviolent revolution. But one thing favors such an attempt: the total inability of violence to change anything for the better." This prayer is written by Mary Lou Konecki, who is also an activist and a sister of Saint Benedict from Erie, Pennsylvania. And she was arrested 13 times for her activism for peace as well. This is her prayer for the decade of nonviolence. I bow to the sacred in all creation. May my spirit fill the world with beauty and wonder. May my mind seek truth with humility and openness. May my heart forgive without limit. May my love for friend, enemy, and outcast be without measure. May my needs be few and my living simple. May my actions bear witness to the suffering of others. May my hands never harm a living being. May my steps stay on the journey of justice. May my tongue speak for those who are poor without fear of the powerful. May my prayers rise with patient discontent until no child is hungry. May my life's work be a passion for peace and nonviolence. May my soul rejoice in the present moment. May my imagination overcome death and despair with new possibility. And may I risk reputation, comfort, and security to bring this hope to the children. Amen.
Thank you, Mackenzie. We will now have the roll call of those in attendance. Are you ready, Holly? Okay. American Baptist Church USA, Miami Association. Archdiocese of Cincinnati,
Bernie Young,
Andrew Musgrave,
Lee Wilson. Lee Wilson. Okay.
Cincinnati Islamic Community Center,
Tyrone did send his regrets. He's dealing with some family issues.
Diocese of Southern Ohio Episcopal Church,
Elizabeth Brown,
Disciples of Christ, Southwest Ohio,
Cheryl Coggins will likely be jumping on any minute here.
okay. Jewish Community Relations Council of the Jewish Federation of Cincinnati, Great Miami River District, United Methodist Church,
Rhonda Deal. Can't see more.
Religious Society of Friends,
J.P. Lund,
and Douglas and Carol Burks. Unitarian Universalist Council of Greater Cincinnati,
Bob Lamb,
Carole Womeldorf.
United Church of Christ of Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky,
Linda Overholt,
we have several guests today. If you would like to introduce yourself and let us know that you're visiting and who you might be associated with, if any organization.
Sister Louise Lears. I'm with the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, so part of the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. Cincinnati. Sometimes I have to think about where I actually live. I'm back in Cincinnati now after being gone for a while. So happy to be here.
Do it for free and then charge me for it. And I want to sign a contract that you're going to be my guy for the next 6 months or a year.
I can go.
Okay.
But my name is Reggie Dublin. I'm with the Urban League of Greater Southwest Ohio, and I was invited by Carole Womeldorf.
Okay.
I'm Maggie Shreve. I'm a retired Presbyterian minister.
I'm Brian Myers. I wandered in off of an email that I received. I'm a lifelong resident of Cincinnati and a member of the Cincinnati Jewish community.
So welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you're here with us today on this very sunny April day. We have next several minutes from Delegates Council meetings that we need to review and approve. The first are our minutes from December 10th, 2025. These were available with the update and invitation. I know this is a long time in the past. Does anyone have any additions or changes that they saw when they looked at them? Hearing none, are our minutes approved?
I was gonna say, they all look good to me, Douglas.
Yeah, they do. Okay, so our December 10th meetings are approved. Any additions or changes to our January 14th minutes? Hearing none, they are approved. And finally, our March 11th, 2026 meeting minutes. Hearing no corrections, they stand approved. Our next item of business are our meeting agenda for today. And here is a copy of it for you to take a look at it. So you can see that we have 3 things on our discussion today. Are there any additions? Then our agenda stands approved.
Douglas, if I could suggest, we just want to reinforce the dates of events that are occurring in Cincinnati, like the protest today and anything else that's coming up that people might know about.
Okay, we usually do those at the end. We call those reminders, and so we do have announcements at the end. We have one there listed, which is our next delegate meeting. But at that time, for those who want to, if they have an announcement, just let me know, and we will have those during our announcements. Thank you. So our meeting today focuses on one of the eternal struggles and challenges that we face as humans. In our opening prayer, we were reminded of global violence. 2 of our speakers today are going to talk about community violence and how we struggle to bring peace to our communities. First, we have an update on what's on the ballot as we get near the May election from Elizabeth Brown, MARCC secretary. So Elizabeth, do you want to let us know what's coming up?
Okay, thank you. And the reason I asked to do this is that in addition to being active with MARCC, I'm with the League. I work well with the League of Women Voters, and I'm very active with them doing presentations and registering voters. And so I just wanted to remind people that early voting started yesterday for the Ohio primary election. The purpose of the spring primary is for the parties to select their candidates in the general election in November. They also use it to select their own central committee members, so those will be on the ballot. And since an election is scheduled, there are often issues or questions or levies also on the ballot for final decision. This year, we won't see many issues. There are no statewide issues or countywide issues or Cincinnati charter amendments. There are a couple of the smaller jurisdictions in our area and some school districts that have levies on this primary ballot. Mount Healthy, North College Hill, and Southwest schools each will have a levy. And the city of Reading and Delhi Township will have levies on the ballot. But if you don't live in one of those jurisdictions, you'll have no issues on the ballot, only candidates. So when you go to vote, you will be asked to choose which party ballot you want, Republican, Democrat, or Libertarian. Ohio has a type of open primary, sometimes called a semi-open primary. Well, you don't register or choose a party when you register to vote. And at a primary election, you can request whichever ballot you choose to vote on. So you will be asked, the first thing you will be asked when you go to vote after you identify yourself is which ballot do you want? I sometimes have people getting upset thinking it's nobody's business but my own and they shouldn't ask what party I am. But in the primary, that is the purpose of the election, is for each of the parties to choose. So you will be asked. I highly recommend that people run a sample ballot before they go to vote. It's very easy to do from county websites, whether it's Hamilton County or another Ohio county. They always have that option on the front page of their website to view a sample ballot. You put in your address and it will pull up a printable PDF that looks identical to what your ballot will look like. So you will see which of the offices your party has folks running for or competing for. So this year we will be electing the statewide offices, the governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, the auditor, the treasurer. We'll be electing some state senators, and we will be electing all of the state representatives. There will be numerous judges on the ballot from the Ohio Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, and the Common Pleas. We have one county commissioner that's up for election. And of course, all the attention ends up being for what they call the midterm elections of one Ohio U.S. Senator and our congressional representatives. It's a lot of races, but in many of the races, a party will only have one candidate running. So run that sample ballot so you can see where your choices as a voter will be. You can learn about the candidates that are running. I find the best way is to check out their individual websites. And also the League of Women Voters has an online voter guide for the primary. It's at vote411.org, VOTE, the numbers 411.org. And it's a national platform, but here in the Cincinnati Area League, we put in the candidates for all the Hamilton County offices for both all the parties. And this year, for the first time, also, we'll be doing Warren County candidates. We have our volunteer members survey all the candidates, and we will post their responses on this online voter guide. We don't do the print voter guide that many people are familiar with, the newsprint version. In the spring, we only do that in November, so we will be doing that for the November election this year. But there is an online voter guide for any of the candidates with information on any of the candidates that chose to respond to us. There's a lot of concern about proposed legislation that would make our elections more difficult. There's the Federal SAVE Act that I think many people have heard about, and there's similar Ohio legislation to the SAVE Act. However, none of these bills have passed. And so this election, we're voting pretty much the way we have always done. As we've often said, we know how to vote in Ohio, and we just need to do it. The one exception that is different this year is that if you choose to vote by mail, your ballot must be received by the Board of Election by election day, by the end of voting on election day. It can either be dropped off or the mail can get it there. So that's the one change this year that's different from previous elections. So if you know folks that choose to do the mail-in voting, make sure that they get the written request in early, as soon as possible now, and then vote as soon as the Board of Elections sends them that ballot. For folks that have requested mail-in ballots, they were mailed yesterday by the Board of Elections. So they should be receiving them in this week. I think it's important to vote in the primaries. A lot of people don't. The turnout is very low. One of the reasons to vote is that if you don't vote in the primaries, when you get to the general election in November, you might not like any of the candidates, and you could have had a say in who they were if you voted in the primary. Also, because this may be cynical, but because the turnout is very low, your vote has extra added weight. There are many of the primary elections that are won or lost by just a few votes. So I think it is important to figure out who the candidates are and to help choose them on the election. That's all I had to say. I don't know, Doug, if you want folks, if they have questions, or maybe just put questions in the chat that I could respond to, since there's a lot on the agenda.
Yeah, sure. If you have any questions about the upcoming election, put them in the chat and Elizabeth will respond.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next item on our agenda are presentations on community violence intervention. The presentation will be by Daniel Burridge, our executive director, and he entitled his presentation, "The Case for Community Violence Intervention." And then a follow-up discussion will be by Carole Womeldorf, and she will be responding, promoting CVI in our neighborhoods. And so I will turn it over to Danny.
All righty. Thank you, Doug. Thanks to everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. Hopefully it's not overly boring to hear from me. Of course, many of you potentially feel like you hear from me too much, so I do apologize for that if that's how you're feeling, but hopefully this will again be really useful for us as an organization. And I will go ahead and share my screen and I'll tell you why. I think that if I can just make sure. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, this presentation then is called "The Case for Community Violence Intervention Programs in Greater Cincinnati." Many of you may recall that as MARCC, we select specific concerns each year. At our fall planning conference at the end of a calendar year, we decide through ranked choice voting by our adjudicatories which concerns we will be focusing on in the year to come. So community safety was one of the three concerns that we chose for 2026. There's also a concern that was there for 2025 and in many previous years before. The fact that community violence and community safety or violence prevention, some iteration of this concern has been chosen so many times in recent years, I think is a testament to the fact that it continues to be a serious ongoing problem in our city. And again, not just in our city, but in the surrounding area as well. In the entire metropolitan area of Greater Cincinnati, we do have a problem with community violence and specifically with gun violence. And so there are historically really one main way in which we as a country in the United States and also in Greater Cincinnati have responded to that, and that is through law enforcement strategies. However, increasingly in recent years, people are realizing, both through direct practice and direct experience, and also through research and really valuable data, that there are also a lot of important non-law enforcement violence reduction strategies that we should be implementing. And so one of those non-law enforcement violence reduction strategies is community violence intervention programs. So that's what I want to talk about today. And so first, though, I do want to just kind of set the stage here a little bit. regarding Cincinnati's gun violence problem. And I do want to already just give a shout out to Carole Womeldorf, who is on our community safety team for MARCC, and again has invited a number of our guests today. She's done a lot of research on this issue, especially within the Cincinnati area. And so even a lot of these statistics draw on some of the research she's already done. So Cincinnati, since 2022, is averaging about 67 homicides per year. And so you can even see that in 24 and 25, the number of homicides was actually quite a bit larger than in 22 and 23. And we're kind of taking this range in the past 4 years because there was a spike in Cincinnati and across the country during COVID. In 2020 and 2021, there was a huge spike in homicides and gun violence across the country. And so then there was also a decline in the recent years, but it's really important to point out this third bullet point, again, something that we should not be calling bullet points. Maybe we'll just say the point here, third dot, is that our reductions in gun violence here in Cincinnati were actually much less than the reductions seen across the country since COVID. So again, we are really staying constant, staying somewhat stagnant at this level of around 67 homicides and around 410 shootings per year since 2022. Always important to point out also that the trauma from gun violence disproportionately impacts our Black and Brown communities, which have already been marginalized and disadvantaged by our economic, social, and political systems. So gun violence does not affect everyone equally. It is disproportionately affecting those communities that have already been disadvantaged by our systems. So again, what has been the response from the city of Cincinnati? And again, I'm really focusing on the city of Cincinnati with this presentation, but a lot of these same sorts of dynamics do correspond to our larger metropolitan area. But where I've got kind of data and sort of this, the really focus of this presentation is on the city of Cincinnati. So our response in the city has been, by and large, through law enforcement. Also, the collaborative agreement has really attempted to address violence by ensuring that law enforcement itself is held accountable. When there are violations of law enforcement protocol, because of the collaborative agreement, which is this summer celebrating 25 years, many of you may remember it was this week, 25 years ago, that the city of Cincinnati was experiencing really serious upheaval, riots, civil unrest. The killing of Timothy Thomas was 25 years ago yesterday on April 7th. And so that process of primarily Black communities and Black organizations rising up and demanding accountability from our city and from our law enforcement resulted in the collaborative agreement. That is still on the books, still very important. And when we hold law enforcement accountable and people know that they can count on law enforcement to be fair and just and transparent, they are more likely to call law enforcement when there are problems, which ultimately reduces violence. And so the collaborative agreement is a key part of Cincinnati's response to violence. And increasingly in past years, prevention programs have also been a key part of the city of Cincinnati's response to community violence. Finally, community development is also a really key part of reducing violence because as people have opportunities for education, for employment, for thriving as individuals and as neighborhoods, they are less likely to resort to violence as a means of settling disputes or as a means of economic survival. Finally, there is a new program called Act for Cincy, which attempts to sort of bring together all of the different initiatives that the city of Cincinnati is implementing as an attempt to reduce violence. And so that Act for Cincy umbrella is exemplified by this. This is from the City of Cincinnati's website. Act for Cincy stands for Achieving Change Together. And we see these 5 different areas, which are all very good. They're all wonderful. We should say, we want thriving neighborhoods. We want reduced accessibility of firearms to youth. We want improved well-being, and we want improved youth support. Absolutely. Additionally, evidence-based policing innovations are also really, really important. There are a lot of different evidence-based policing innovations that the city of Cincinnati is implementing. This does include the collaborative agreement as a framework and a number of other law enforcement-focused initiatives. So again, this looks really wonderful. It sounds really great. But the argument that I would make and that we as MARCC are making through our community safety team, also through the op-ed that we published back in August of 2025, is that this is actually not enough. So I would actually say that when we go back and look at the city of Cincinnati's response to the gun violence problem, it has been insufficient. When we look at these different areas, law enforcement is necessary in some cases, but it is currently understaffed and it has become increasingly reliant on surveillance technologies, which do not always, in fact, never can accurately prevent violence. Again, they are tools that oftentimes enable us to prosecute criminals after the fact. We, again, have the collaborative agreement, but there is increasingly data that shows that there are still racial inequities in how policing happens in the city of Cincinnati. There is a number of prevention programs that are being funded by the city of Cincinnati and many prevention programs that are operating without the city support. But these prevention programs are typically not well coordinated, either amongst themselves or with the city, and they are not sufficiently funded. We need more funding for the city of Cincinnati's prevention programs. Finally, community development is, again, something that would and should prevent violence, but the way community development is happening currently in our city still disproportionately favors white and middle and upper classes. So these things all need to be done better. But additionally, when it comes to these violence reduction frameworks, there is one big piece that is missing from the city of Cincinnati's framework, and that is what's highlighted in green, is violence intervention programs. So here we see this comparison between what the city of Cincinnati is already doing, albeit when it needs to improve in all of these areas, but compared to what MARCC as an organization, what we are proposing, what we are advocating for. And so in a lot of ways, this presentation today is to really make sure and try to help all of us as participants in MARCC, as representatives of our adjudicatories, or as guests who hopefully will want to work with us as MARCC on these advocacy and education initiatives around violence reduction. We want to highlight that there is this one key piece, violence intervention programs, that are not even really being considered or fully implemented here in the city of Cincinnati. And I'll get into the nuances of that. There's some details, that there's sort of these nominal movements in the direction of violence intervention programs in certain ways, but really we need a lot more. And so that's what I'm going to go into detail on. And even according to our really well-respected Vice Mayor, Jan Michelle Lemon-Kearney, she considers these community violence intervention programs to seriously be the missing piece of our violence reduction framework in the city of Cincinnati. So to get into the details then, for community violence intervention programs, these are programs that seek to provide specialized outreach and services to those individuals most likely to commit acts of or be victims of gun violence. So historically, those individuals who are most likely to commit acts of gun violence, they have been targeted by law enforcement. That has been the response. If we have evidence that somebody's likely to commit some sort of crime or they've committed these sort of gun violence crimes in the past, law enforcement is the entity that goes after them. Community violence intervention programs changes that mindset and says that what we really need to do with those folks who are at risk, who are most likely to commit these sorts of acts or be victims of it, they need to be reached out to by what's called credible messengers. Credible messengers are people whose lives have been directly impacted by gun violence in the past, but that they have managed to move beyond that. They have realized that resorting to gun violence or using gun violence is not a way to actually pursue their objectives or let alone to be fulfilled as individuals. And so these credible messengers are typically on the front lines of community violence intervention programs and are the ones reaching out to those individuals currently involved in gun violence, trying to provide them with services and thereby trying to be sort of agents of change for others in the context of these community violence intervention programs. So before we go any farther, I do really want to kind of make sure we're distinguishing violence intervention from violence prevention, because oftentimes people get these two things mixed up. They can be very similar, but they are not the same. So what is violence prevention versus what is violence intervention? Prevention are community-wide efforts to address collective risk factors and provide protective factors to youth and families. So when we think of prevention, this is just really, I like to think of it as the sort of things that every community should always already have. These are after-school programs. These are opportunities for mentoring, extracurricular programs for youth, life skills opportunities, employment training for adults or for youth as they get older. These are the sorts of things that hopefully, many of us might look back to our childhoods and we took these sorts of things for granted. In communities that are disproportionately impacted by gun violence, there are not the sorts of stable prevention or after-school programmings, mentoring opportunities, extracurriculars that should be there. So this is just a baseline. These are things that should be available to any and all communities. With that said, it's actually very hard to measure the success of prevention programs because you are trying to say, well, let's say, if we're trying to measure the success of prevention programs vis-a-vis gun violence, in reality, the programming is quite separate from the action that we're wanting to measure a decrease in. It's hard to connect the impact of prevention programs to actual gun violence reductions or increases. Nevertheless, there is evidence of long-term impact when prevention programs are successful and sustainable when it comes to gun violence. Now, let's compare that to intervention. Violence intervention programs are specific efforts to stop specific groups and individuals from committing violent crimes. And again, even since 2017, when these sorts of programs were starting to be studied, it was proven that these programs were most effective when credible messengers were focusing on particular people. Again, when these credible messengers, people who have kind of been involved in one degree or another with gun violence, and they come out of that life, but they are able to go back and be sort of ambassadors or be liaisons with people who are still in the world of gun violence. And when these things are, again, implemented successfully, there are almost immediate impacts on violent crime rates in those specific geographical areas where they were implemented. So we can also put it in kind of a table here where we can think about the different levels of efforts to reduce violence. Kind of that top level, again, is going to be law enforcement. This is not an attempt to do away with law enforcement. It's not an attempt to defund the police in any way, but rather to ensure that law enforcement is only being used and deployed in those specific cases where individuals are making no attempts at sort of choosing other pathways. And so when violent crimes are taking place in their immediate aftermath, when there are known criminals who are known to be, either planning or about to be engaged in violent crimes, those are still the moments when law enforcement is appropriate. That is not being disputed by an advocacy for community violence intervention. Rather, community violence intervention is kind of the second level of violence reduction, and it needs to rely on community violence intervention programs, and it needs to rely on these credible messengers. And it goes and tries to do outreach with folks who are, in the past, have been involved in violent crimes, but have come to a place where they are actively trying to change. They are trying to reform their lives. They're trying to be rehabilitated. They are trying to pursue other options. And I'll get into a little bit more of those details when we talk about specific CVI programs. But again, these community violence intervention programs, they're based on this street outreach. They're based on providing opportunities for new sorts of life plans for these folks who have historically been involved in gun violence. Some of the specific programs, such as Advanced Peace, they suggest and propose transformative travel, getting these folks out of their normal neighborhoods and into opportunities to see what else is going on in the world, that there are other things that they could be doing with their lives, other opportunities. And ultimately, and we'll get into these details a little bit more, these stipends for their life goals, they come after these individuals have chosen to be part of this program and have proven that they are consistent with the program for around 6 months. We'll get into some of the critiques of these CVI programs in a couple more slides, but one of the biggest critiques that has been levied against CVI is that it's just kind of paying criminals to not shoot. And that's really just a very, too basic of an analysis. It lacks some nuance. It lacks the details. Yes, ultimately, people who have been involved in gun violence can get stipends, but that is after they have proven themselves, again, with a long period of time of being involved in the program and achieving different goals that they have set for themselves. This isn't just the sort of thing where oh, you're about to pull the trigger, let me put some cash in your pocket instead. No, it is a process in which these people prove that they're committed to changing their way of life. And at that point, they can start to get some stipends for progress towards their life goals. And oftentimes this includes being involved in educational training or employment training or substance abuse treatment, whatever the case might be. And again, that is all very much in contrast to prevention programs, which again, this is this basic kind of first level of violence reduction. These are programs that should be active and available, well-funded in all communities in our city and across the region. And again, all these things need to work together to reduce violence. So some of the best national examples of CVI programs are Advanced Peace, which is something that we have already talked a lot about within our community safety team in the city of Cincinnati as well. This is a picture from the first implementation of Advanced Peace in Fresno, California. And then the other big program that has kind of really been prominent in the United States and really across the world is Cure Violence. And so I'll say a little bit more about these two in just a moment here. But so to go into, the specific argument, the case for CVI in Greater Cincinnati, it's got three different arguments, we would say. And again, this is all based on a one-pager that the community safety team for MARCC has put together. We're already starting to use this in community meetings. We're already wanting to kind of get it out there. But these three arguments are, one is that it is actually the most effective when it's implemented properly. Two, it's actually cheaper in the long run. We know this about a lot of different sorts of prevention or intervention sorts of programs. If we can get out in front of these things, it's cheaper than paying for, in this case, for the cost of homicides and the cost of incarceration when it comes to gun violence. And finally, number three, community violence intervention programs are morally and ethically right in the sense that we all deserve a chance for redemption. So first, CVI is effective. Across the country, CVI programs have dramatically reduced gun violence and facilitated community empowerment and healing when they have been implemented with fidelity to the program, support from local government, and rigorous evaluation methods. And so those are some caveats. There's been a lot of instances in which CVI programs have been implemented in ways that led to their failure. But when they are implemented according to the established program, when local government supports them, and when they are rigorously evaluated, there have been really, really dramatic successes. And so a lot of these have come through the Advanced Peace program. In Sacramento, California, there was a 29% reduction in gun violence with the implementation of Advanced Peace since 2022. Richmond, California, which was kind of the birthplace of Advanced Peace, they've actually had a 55% reduction in gun homicides since Advanced Peace was implemented in 2019. And also, this is not just from Advanced Peace. Advanced Peace has a lot of their own numbers, but as researchers and critical analysts, we can't just always take, the organization doing the work, we can't always just take their word for it. But these are actually also been verified by outside researchers, by third-party researchers. So really does make this the case even stronger. And then finally, you might say, well, places like Sacramento, Richmond, it's a different context. It's all the way out in California. But Lansing, Michigan is a place that might be much more similar to Cincinnati. And they've actually had a 52% reduction in gun homicides with Advanced Peace between 2022 and 2024. And they're in the midst of doing their analysis for 24 through 26. It's not out yet, but it seems to show that they have continued to have really significant reductions in gun violence. So kind of the argument for the CVI is effective. There's also a lot of research showing that CVI is promising. And in kind of research language, this is saying that, again, we can't have total confidence in the validity of this approach, but that there is really promising sorts of evidence. And again, drawing on that same article, there's a lot of different articles that could be drawn on here, but don't want to overload you all with citations, but just to kind of also some more qualitative anecdotal evidence. With Cure Violence, there have been implementations of Cure Violence across the world and have seen, in different, parts of the Caribbean, South America, in Europe, and they've also seen significant decreases in many different contexts across the world. Even before Cure Violence and Advanced Peace, There was Homeboy Industries out in LA with Father Greg Boyle. Many of you may be familiar with him and his writings. He talks about nothing stops a bullet like a job. And that again, going after those folks most susceptible to gun violence and not trying to throw them in jail, but trying to throw opportunities at them instead has been very, very effective. In Greensboro, North Carolina, where I did some work and research, what began as a cure violence program has now been kind of revamped, modified, and adapted to their local context. And CVI work is now part of a larger violence reduction ecosystem there in Greensboro called Peace on Purpose. Finally, just right across the state lines in Indianapolis, Indiana, they have what they call an Indy Peace Fellowship, which again is a local adaptation of CVI work in which those most susceptible to gun violence receive outreach, access to life goals, and supportive services. So again, what could Cincinnati do? Maybe it is a direct implementation of advanced peace, or maybe it's something that would be drawing on these insights from these other programs and implemented in our own way here in Cincinnati. And I'm seeing there's a lot of chat. I'm sorry. Hopefully those aren't all directed at me. Hopefully there's good discussion going on in the chat. I can't monitor it. So finally, CVI is, I would say, almost here. There are some really promising things going on in Cincinnati regarding CVI. First, there is a city-funded hospital-based intervention program called Hope and Shield. So what this means is that when there are victims of gun violence who go to both Cincinnati Children's and University Hospital, there are CVI professionals who go and engage with those people and engage with their families and try to ensure that those victims do not try to retaliate. And also to try to just kind of get a sense of what's going on with those conflicts that have resulted in gun violence. And so that's good to do CVI work out of hospitals, but it's not enough. That work also needs to be done in the communities. And that is, again, another really big finding from recent literature on CVI. Also, there has been, it's not person-based CVI, but there has been a lot of place-based CVI where, you go to a place such as Government Square, where there had been a lot of sort of unrest, there's been some unruliness, youth involved in fights and different things. Send people out there, send credible messengers there. This has been work that Iris Rowley has done a lot of in recent years and has had a lot of success. And so again, people like Iris are credible messengers and people that she has on her crew. They've been going and working with those youth on Government Square and in other places, getting them food, getting them, bus passes, making sure that they have access to programs after school. Finally, there's many neighborhood programs across Cincinnati that if they got professionalization and training and more funding, could theoretically do this CVI work. And this is just a really just basic little list, not exhaustive, maybe not even fully updated. But Mitch Morris out in Winton Terrace has the Save Our Kings and Queens program. There's Positive Force and Brothers Inc. in Avondale. And then also Peace and Hope Lifestyle, Rodney Christian in East Westwood. He's with the Presbyterians and has a really close relationship with Knox Presbyterian. Maggie could tell us more about that potentially. So there's really awesome programs there that are operating, that are working right now. And with, again, further funding, further training, could potentially do some of that work of CVI in the neighborhoods. Finally, there is a set aside. There is currently a set aside in the Cincinnati City budget from back in 2025, $250,000 for advanced peace that is waiting for matching funds and is also, we know, waiting for the right kind of community partner to be able to actually administer and implement an advanced peace model. That's really complicated though. Like I know that there's a lot of behind the scenes things going on with that that we as MARCC are not fully familiar with. But there have been attempts, and again, the Vice Mayor, Jan Michelle McCurney, is a very strong ally for CVI, for advanced peace. She sees MARCC as a strong ally as well. The only problem is that, again, when the larger city council and the larger sort of public of the Cincinnati area, these CVI programs are still kind of in the minority report. It's still, I think, somewhat, they're not known well enough. They're still a little bit controversial. And so that's why we are wanting to do this awareness raising work right now with MARCC and in larger communities. Finally, with the CVI is cheaper than current strategies. One homicide likely costs Cincinnati taxpayers around $1.2 million, all told. That's according to the National Cost of Violence Report. And if that money was invested in CVI, it would employ and professionally train community-based credible messengers to connect potential shooters to trauma-competent, transformative services that would save lives and build stronger, more peaceful communities. And then this is actually the third point on our argument here is that CVI is an ethical opportunity. As people of faith, we celebrate the evidence that CVI restores formerly violent people to the community as contributing citizens. CVI treats all human beings with the dignity they deserve, providing them with a chance at redemption. And by helping individuals to heal from the trauma of gun violence, we also equip our most underserved communities to heal and thrive. So community violence intervention truly saves lives by delivering healing and hope where it is needed most. So very quickly to just go back through these critics' concerns about CVI. This was something I dealt with a lot when I was doing research and evaluation on CVI in North Carolina, was that law enforcement was very unhappy that they felt they were not being communicated with. That, CVI, credible messengers were out there, trying to do outreach with people that they also had on their lists. And so what needs to happen is not that there's not a lack of coordination with law enforcement, but rather that communication must have degrees of separation between the credible messengers and the beat cops. And so there needs to be ways in which credible messengers can communicate with law enforcement and law enforcement with credible messengers, but without putting anyone at risk. And that again is a really kind of large can of worms that we can't necessarily get into, but oftentimes credible messengers, by doing that work, are putting themselves at risk. And if they were to talk to police kind of openly, they might put themselves at further risk. And there has to be ways for law enforcement to communicate with CVI programs without putting anybody at risk. Second, again, I already mentioned this a little bit. There's this critique that, we don't want to just pay criminals to not shoot, to not pull the trigger. And that was literally one of the things that was said on Cincinnati City Council when this was being debated. Now, this is really lacking nuance. As I mentioned before, once individuals choose to participate in CVI programs, they must meet around 6 months worth of program goals to qualify for very minimal stipends. So it's not something that folks are getting handed, huge checks or huge wads of cash, when they're about to pull the trigger. It's not that simple. But yes, if we want people to reform their lives, and they're using a gun was kind of one of their main tools for their livelihood, that has to be replaced by something. And so you can't just assume that people, and then again, we know that jail and incarceration have not truly addressed those issues. Finally, and this one is very true, CVI programs have not yet sufficiently been evaluated. And so many folks are working on this. One of the biggest issues is that an evaluation model must be implemented simultaneously with the implementation of the program. And that, again, is getting into the weeds a little bit, but these programs are really difficult to evaluate given kind of how they operate. But evaluation models must be happening right when the implementation of the program happens. So next steps, and this is the last little slide here. Going to keep doing research on this, fine-tuning some of these presentations. Want to put together a white paper on CVI to actually share with policymakers in the not-too-distant future. We want to continue doing education and organizing with key community and faith leaders as well as grassroots folks. And we want to be doing advocacy with City Council, with the mayor, with civil servants, like City Manager's office, to build support around this. But we want to do it in the right way. We want to make sure that we really kind of have our bases covered with the right information, the right way of talking about these things, so that we can really get decision makers to understand these sorts of programs without being defensive and without resorting to some of their knee-jerk reactions, I think, about law enforcement or about these sorts of programs. So with that, open up for questions. I know I went over a little bit, so thanks.
Right. So I want to give Carole about 10 minutes. And so, Carole, do you have your discussion and comments?
Hi, thanks so much. Thank you, Danny. Appreciate the focusing on CVI. The community violence intervention is a critical piece that we, as we said, was missing. It's also something that in a city the size of Cincinnati, especially, it's not going to be able to do the work alone. It's going to require a lot of cooperation from a lot of organizations that do, whether it's youth mentoring or youth after school care kind of opportunities. A lot of community organizations like reentry, recovery, harm reduction, anything that's working in the broad space of violence prevention can support this work. Churches and faith groups can support this work. There's so many different ways that people have different needs and needs met. Obviously, funders, mental health professionals can be part of the work, though typically what they find is when you're first working with folks who are most having the issues on the street, they're not open to going to mental health workers. They're actually training the violence interventionists, the neighborhood change agents or credible messenger. They're training them with a cognitive behavioral therapy that can be sort of a gateway into doing professional therapy, but it helps them to start to understand what's happening in their minds and their bodies when they're having trauma response, when they're operating in a survival mode. And that kind of intervention, building trust. I mean, one of the things that just is repeated again and again in these circles is it's built on relationships. It's building trust in places where trust is very hard to find, and very few people are operating from a charitable perspective. And it's building, and it's love. I mean, it's real love in a way that resonates for folks who haven't seen a whole lot of it and who really have spent most of their lives kind of avoiding being in the spotlight because that's to them equivalent to being at risk for incarceration. And it's building hope, it's building emotional intelligence, and it's building the capacity to trust other people and build out relationships. So it's a bridge into kind of civil society and alternative ways of making money and being connected. We're in the process of developing a new organization that's going to build a coalition of organizations who are doing the work of harm reduction, of healing, of prevention, violence prevention, and intervention. And our new name is Peace Umbrella. And within the next month and a half, we expect to be able to kind of launch that and hope that actually within a month we're talking about. So hope you guys will be supporters and help us connect with the folks in your communities who are doing work with youth and healing and violence prevention in general. And gradually build that out, because CVI can't happen in a vacuum. It's not something that a small group of people do by themselves. It's extremely community oriented and requiring a lot of different resources from the community, as well as just those trusting relationships of communication and shared information. And any other questions, any other aspects of it? I think one of the things I've heard people talk about is like, some folks are kind of falling between the cracks. I mean, if you think about any social service program out there, it's going to have a reach, and maybe 70% of the population, maybe 80, maybe even a really great program is going to have maybe reach 90% of their target population. But there's always some folks on that tail end of that curve that are not going to receive the services. And it's also going to take the ability to kind of connect in a place where the people are so isolated and so disaffected, disconnected. They've been on survival mode since they were young teenagers in many cases, and you can't just you have to build that up gradually, and the right people need to step into those places and need to be paid to do that, and they need benefits and they need training and they need professional funding so that they can do it in a way that's going to be sustained and effective. I think I'll leave it on that. I see a couple hands up. Hey, Iris.
Hey guys, first, I'm sorry, I can't hear Mr. Burks. He's talking, but he's.
You're muted, Doug.
As you can see up on the screen, if you're on a computer, people have their hands up. That's under the react button. And when I was looking, I think Iris had her hand up and then Jan. So Iris.
I'll always defer to Queen Mother Jan if she wants to go first. I'm afraid of her.
Did you just say you deferred to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I was so proud of reading about you in that big spread in the paper, Iris. I thought, I know that woman. I love that woman. Anyhow, my question was, you're talking about like education, creating trust, all the things that very difficult to try to create trust with a group of people who have been taught that there's no trust. But the other thing I was thinking is, you were talking about how difficult it is to have these messengers involved with the police. That wouldn't be a trustworthy thing for them to do. But it seems to me that besides educating the communities, that if there was a way to pull in the police so that the police could volunteer to say, I want to learn about these kinds of programs. I want to learn how I can allow people to trust me. I mean, it seems to me the police need to be educated in violence, not just like, by arresting people. That's not the way to get it done. But the police need to believe in redemption also. And I think there's some way to teach them that there is redemption possible and they can be part of that. That's it.
Okay.
Was there a
Oh,
question, Janet? Because I have a reaction.
I would love to.
Or Danny, did you want to respond? Or
I would love to respond to the woman that I'm scared of, since I've been working closely with the police for 25 years on this particular issue. And this is how we got in the game. And so I want to walk you all back just a little bit. Our federal lawsuit was because we were representing 15 unarmed Black men who had been murdered at the hands of the police in the 5 to 6 year period. The comprehensive overview and reach of the collaborative is far exceeding what any other city has ever done as a way of getting accountability, transparency, and fairness through policing. I would say that this is the greatest time for people to understand truly what CPD is doing. They're promoting SARA. SARA is the foundation and the way that they think on how to solve crimes. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm a Black woman who was born in the city of Cincinnati. I'm married to a Black man. I have 3 Black sons and 7 Black grandchildren. There's a difference in how Black people are policed in this city as opposed to non-Black people. And even though our class reads the last line says all others, Black people are still on top of the boxes of some things that are very negative. So Jan, I want to say to you that if you listen to Interim Chief Henney, who just presented in Law and Public Safety, speak the other day, and their goals, I just gave it to Al Gerharstein, of how they are measured around the works and expectations of the collaborative agreement, how they have for a year been working on the recommendations of the refresh, and how SARA is an integral part of how policing will be done in this community. That gives us a multitude of things. And since I don't know if anybody else has been working intimately like I have to hold these provisions true to save lives, to save humanity, to save dignity, because when we are disrespected by the police, it does way more than just that arrest. It is a lifelong thing. And so when I can quantify to you all that since using SARE, the reduction in crime and the reduction of arrests, which is huge. I can even quantify utilizing SARE on Government Square and showing you that data where we reduce crime by 67% and arrests by 58% by working with the children. Now, what I can tell you, it was extremely difficult in getting CPS to the table, which is a huge part of what we do. It was extremely difficult in getting all the other systems that are failing people. This is the first time in my very critical work in working with assessing police, seeing them be able to say other organizations. I'm going to put a pin in that real quick. If you've read the collaborative agreement, I'm going to challenge you to go back and read paragraph 13. It gives you the nuance of why CBUF and the ACLU sued in federal court in 2001. And there are 3 reasons. The second reasons are societal ills. The first one was the necessity of the day. And the third one is the future. Everything isn't policeable and nor should it be. This is the first time in Black communities' history that they can say some segments that policing isn't ginormous in our lives, and nor should it be. We want to be free thinking, clear thinking people. We want to have access to housing, food, quality education. We want all these things that make you policeable if you don't get it. I'm going to put another pin in that. So what I'm inviting you all to, because it is our 25th year, and I do take some offense when we talk about that if nobody invited me to the conversation, because for the first 22 years, I gave freely. These last 3 or 4 years is the only time I've been compensated to consult with the city manager. When I went to Government Square, everybody in this city knew the issues we were having on Government Square. Everybody. I just chose to go and watch the police and do some problem solving. That's how I got to where I got to. We have 311 community outreach people because the police shouldn't be there. Community should be there. And they do work for the city. We have security from CPS down there, well, will be. They come back and forth. And then we have some detailed officers that are down there and all the transit sites. And so the reports that we have put out are all the other issues that we know have been around for the past 25 years. We've watched education get worse. I did Brothers in Motion because of a police and young Black male interaction in Bond Hill. That was 3.5, almost 4 years ago, where the brothers were selling water and the police rolled up and it became a problem. The city created the whole entrepreneur pathway just based off of that interaction. You don't see any issues on that corner anymore because the young folk were able to change the peddling laws, which means they can sell water without being harassed and arrested. They learned how to become entrepreneurs, and that program is still going on through Youth at the Center. I say that because it sounds like you all are missing a lot. Jan, the work that you just talked about should be connected to Act for Cincy, Achieving Change Together. That is the violence reduction strategy that the city has right now. I'm saying that to say, for the next 3 months leading up to July, we're going to have 3 community meetings. The first one will be on public safety. I posted it. I got over 150 suggestions, nuances, and there are so many national programs that are out there. Which fits better in the city of Cincinnati and which is going to give us sustainability? What is going to help lives? What is going to sustain the help of lives? We have so much data, we're tripping over ourselves. The same things we're talking about right now, the same things we talked about 25 years ago. So I'm asking you to read the agreement. First meeting on public safety, that will be April 14th at New Prospect. Second meeting, second Tuesday in May. We will be talking about community problem-oriented policing. Third meeting in June, second Tuesday. Again, I don't have the dates in front of me right now, but y'all can look at every second Tuesday. We're going to pull it all together. July will be what I call my final dance with y'all around this, what we call community police relations. It will be, how do we get here? It will be a museum style on July 16th, how we got here through song, dance, and symphony. How do we get here? You will see artifacts that we have in my office, just the clothes that Timothy Thomas was murdered in. And that happened 25 years ago yesterday. So while we cavalierly sit around and we talk, people have lost their lives. On July 17th, we will have judges, attorneys talking about how to civilly defend cases, how to have the civilian oversight, what that looks like, and how does that play a role in holding police and community accountable. The third day, July 18th, will be community problem-oriented policing. We're bringing in our national trainers because problem solving has evolved. Pivot is not the same thing as problem solving, although it is a problem solving component. You all need to better understand what the community has re-signed onto, and the city and the police. We all signed the agreement again saying we're going to do this refresh. We're stuck to that. So I want to invite everybody, and I want to invite Carole because we're bringing in some national folks to tell us what are they using around violence reduction? What does that look like? Everything doesn't fit every city. Every city has its own nuances, and we know that resources are being sucked dry every day. So we have to be very creative about what we're saying and how we're going to help people. So I just got the notice that you all were having the meeting, and I thought it would be appropriate for me to jump in. I hope no one is offended. But I just wanted to give you all that. And no, I did not want to be in that article in the Inquirer. I'm not talking to the individual people or Channel 9. So when you see their 25th reflection, you won't see this beautiful black face. But you will see this beautiful black face at the next 3 months community meetings. We're going to have different tables too, because there's still stuff that we need to talk about, what policing looks like for the next 25 years. And I would say in this town, as I still travel and talk to other towns, I was just on the phone with Minneapolis 2 nights ago. They are trying to get all of our response to services, our alternative response to crisis, our mental health response crisis team, and how all these people show up. They are just, everybody's trying to get to somewhere that Cincinnati is. So I'm just asking you all to come, be participants in it, and then show up for the conference because it's free.
Danny.
Yeah. First off, Iris, thank you so much for coming. Really, really appreciate you being here. I had no idea you were on here. I was sitting there presenting. I'm not sure at what point you joined in. But the presentation for today was, very much about, the specific component of, community violence intervention. And, as you kind of laid out, the collaborative agreement as a topic that's like its own topic. And I remember you and I spoke briefly at some point like that. We do have to get you here for one of these monthly meetings for MARCC, for a Delegates Council meeting, to be exclusively focused on the collaborative agreement. I think that, I have been remiss in not making sure that happened already, but I think we need to definitely get that on the agenda. But, again.
No, Danny, and the reason that I say that is I don't think people understand the collaborative agreement is the public safety document for Black people. So all of these conversations matter because either you're working with police or you're not. They need to understand who's on first, who's on second, what the deal is in order to have, continuity amongst what's happening. So it is a public safety document. And that's when I saw the agenda, I just got it late. I just came in the last 10, 15 minutes. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, because we definitely did address, even mentioning, the anniversary of Timothy Thomas's killing, and the importance of the collaborative agreement for all of this, and again, that it is really a national model. It is kind of the overarching framework which structures relationships between the city police, and then especially citizens, but especially again, how Black communities and Black people can hold police accountable. And so MARCC, other folks in this space know this better than I, but MARCC was also involved, kind of as trying to support the process of negotiation that led to the collaborative agreement. I know I can speak for everybody in that we would love to be a part of that in any way we can, again, and like, I think, you and I probably need to talk more about this, but like, I don't think that I've been getting any of your emails. I don't know that you're on our email list. So this is a great moment to just say, hey, let's make sure that we are in better communication, because MARCC absolutely wants to be a part of any effort that's contributing to community safety, and especially in regards to the collaborative agreement, ensuring that it is continuing to be used and implemented and, just treasured, appreciated in the way that it needs to be. MARCC is there for that. We're all here for that.
We would not be anywhere near where we are today without MARCC. You've had some heavy hitters help us advocate, and no, I haven't been there, and so I feel a little kick to the curb. I feel some kind of way about this, y'all my peeps. And plus we need your skill sets. We need facilitators to help us work through this. And it is the 25th year. We want to honor MARCC. And that was my other thing that I wanted to say, because it has been 25 grueling years and not no one organization got us here. It is the hopes, the prayers, the cries, the tears, all of the things. But again, definitely. And then plus there's this chick in my office. I hope that isn't. I'm scared of her too.
Oh, look at who it is.
Yeah, she made me get on here like, you need to, and make sure they know, because I am derelict in the duties of getting this information out. It was a hard fight last year with MAGA and some of the FOP. And so I'm slow to the draw. And thank you for your support, Daniel. Thank you for all
Always,
of that.
100%.
So yes, we do need to talk sooner than later.
Sounds good.
And I'm happy to, anything that's a good fit, I'd love to hear more about. And, if there's smaller meetings or larger meetings, anything, I'm interested.
Yeah, we definitely want you to come to public safety meetings, and there will be, again, time to talk about all the strategies that are out there, because there are a bunch. Folk, I hear it every day. It's like, okay, so what is it? Let's bring it all together. I'm going to treat you all like they treated the Black United Front and the other 4 organizations. Get together, tell us what it is that can be well and sustainable, and so that we all can support it. That's my goal.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, Carole.
I think we have time for one more question, since we are past our hour. Mark Basil.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. It was really unprecedented to be part of that process when we had the race riots, because when the federal mediator came in to try to resolve things, the lawsuit pending, of course, but put on hold for the federal mediator come in, he convened different stakeholders. One was the families of policemen. One was the family of victims. One of the groups, the stakeholders, was the quote unquote religious community. And rather than go to each individual faith, he just came to Mark and said, you're going to be the best voice to represent the quote unquote religious community. And it was a really fascinating process to be a part of, because the mediator did as much listening as a great mediator does, but it was also great to see Mark be there as a stakeholder representing the religious community.
Yeah, Bill, that was Jay Rothman, and he was called a special master. We didn't like that name, but that was by the federal courts. That's what the federal courts called him, and it was his job to come in and facilitate. It was 8 stakeholder groups, and you're absolutely correct. But the largest group in 2001 were the young people. It was 1,000 of them. And although we all got the same questions, we were all in our own separate, sacred places, being able to give our feedback, and thus ended up being the 3,500 goals. And that is my goal. If there are other goals that we want to vote on around the collaborative, including public safety, then let's do that. Let's come together. And that's my hope for July. So I hope you are available, Mr. Basil. Definitely need you. We want to honor you. We want to honor Mark, as I said. Mark has been a staple in this process. Peg Fox was a humdinger. And, I can't even remember the guy, but I'm getting old. I can't remember the director before him, but Mark has helped us achieve a lot of the things that we have.
That's probably Dwayne Holm.
Yeah.
Dwayne, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Catching up on my history.
See, yes, you're right.
Well, yeah, no, just before Doug closes us out here, I just, again, want to say, special thanks to Iris. Thank you so much for jumping in here. And thanks to Andrea behind the scenes there for bringing Iris in. That's great. Mm-hmm. Great to see you. And thanks to everybody for just a really rich discussion. And again, we'll look forward as Mark to being a part of those upcoming conversations, upcoming meetings on public safety, bringing proposals to the table, listening to proposals, listening to how we as an interfaith coalition, which is, always will be standing for racial justice and social justice in our city and across the metropolitan area. We want to serve that. We want to be at that service. So great opportunity to really continue that coordination here. So, but yeah, thanks to everybody. And again, I just wanted to mention too, I will make a couple little additions and changes to my presentation. Just making sure I'm inserting, the proper links, a couple additional citations, and we will share that out in our next email blast. And we'll make sure that Iris is on our email list now moving forward. And yeah, again, thanks to everybody. Look forward to being in touch.
As we come to a close, as Danny just said, I want to thank our speakers today, Elizabeth, Danny, and Carole. And I want to express a great appreciation for all of our guests today, and in particular, Iris. I'm glad that you found us and came. I think it points out that we can't solve our problems if we don't work with each other. And if we don't learn how to understand and to see our problems through other eyes. And, I think that is something that we have really missed. And so it speaks of the power of collaboration and being a whole community. And so I want to thank everyone. We did have a request for announcements. If we can, if there are any announcements that people want to bring up, if we can do them and try to focus on those that we need to do our most attention, since we are, of course, at our end. And so earlier, someone was talking about announcements of things that are happening today and within the week. The other is when you have things that you would like to bring forward to MARCC, please contact Holly. We do updates all of the time to announce things that MARCC and our adjudicatories need to know about and might want to participate in. Jan, do you have a quick announcement?
I have a very quick announcement. I would just like to call everyone's attention to the fact that the Kentucky legislature just re-upped the death penalty. To begin killing people again. And it's going to go before the governor, and I guess he can veto it. And I'd like to ask everyone, as an advocate of peace, to contact the governor. Even though we're not in Kentucky, some of us are, and still I think it's important for people like us to speak up against that kind of violence.
If you look at our agenda, a reminder of our May Delegates Council meeting, which is on May 13th. And our speaker is Hamilton County Commissioner Denise Driehaus. It will be in person at the Fifth Third Convention Center, United Way Building, 2400 Reading Road. As I do at the end of every Delegates Council meeting, I remind and ask everyone to take an action, to do something. Change comes from small, continual steps. And so just discussing the world that we want to have is not enough, but you can find something to do and act. And I think that that is why Iris's message of just looking at a 25-year history is that we need to act and continually act, because change comes slowly, unfortunately, and it's composed of many, many steps and many, many people. You have to change hearts and how people behave as a beginning. So with that, I would like to say we are adjourned, and thank everyone for coming today. It was a powerful meeting for me. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.